This hourly segment is brought to you by On Target Radio. From firearms and Second Amendment rights to personal freedoms and government intrusions. Listen here Sunday nights at 9.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Dr. Roy Spencer is a meteorologist, principal research scientist at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and the U.S. science team leader for the Advanced Microwave Scanning Radiometer on NASA's Aqua satellite.
You got Biden again?
So he's got some credentials.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
He writes how the media helped destroy rational climate debate. There are lots of self-proclaimed climate experts now. They don't need a degree in physics or atmospheric science. For credentials, they only need to care and tell others they care. They believe the Earth is being murdered by humans and want the media to spread the word. Most people do not have the time or educational background to understand the global warming debate and so defer to the consensus of experts on the subject. The trouble is, no one ever says exactly what the experts agree upon. When you dig into the details, what the experts agree upon in their official pronouncements is rather unremarkable. The Earth has warmed a little since the 1950s, a date chosen because before that humans had not produced enough CO2 to really matter. Not enough warming for most people to actually feel, but enough for thermometers to pick up the signal buried in the noise of natural weather swings of many tens of degrees and spurious warming from urbanization effects. The UN consensus is that most of that warming is probably due to increasing atmospheric CO2 from fossil fuel use, but we really don't know for sure. For now, I tend to agree with the consensus, is what Dr. Roy Spencer just described, cause for us to deindustrialize our economy? No. How the media distorts the debate to his point, I introduce as Exhibit 42,673, the Atlantic voyage of media darling Greta Thunberg. And I don't mean to pick on her. She's just a teenage kid being exploited by her stage parents and the D.C. press corps. But I mean, the whole thing is a little absurd. She sails on her ark across
Sweden,
from Britain to New York for a climate conference. And then, of course, as soon as she arrives, she's peppered with questions, and she's a renowned expert on the topic. Ignore Dr. Roy Spencer.
Prepubescent.
Let's talk to 16-year-old Greta Thunberg about atmospheric science.
The climate and ecological crisis is a global crisis and the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. And if we don't manage to work together, to cooperate, and to work together despite our differences, then we will fail. So we need to stand together and support each other and to take action, because otherwise it might be too late.
Yeah, I get it. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I got it. On President Trump, Ms. Thunberg had this to say.
It's strange. Everyone always asks me about Donald Trump. But, I mean, my message for him is just listen to the science, and he obviously doesn't do that. So,
he's the one.
I mean, as I always say to this question, if no one has been able to convince him about the climate crisis, the urgency, then why should I be able to do that? So I'm just going to now focus on spreading awareness, and that people in general will start caring and realize how big of a crisis this is.
Okay, now go back to reading and writing.
Michael St. George writing about Greta's ark and her voyage. In a blaze of unremittingly fawning publicity and uncritical adulation, of which even Moses descending from Mount Sinai with the tablets bearing the Ten Commandments would have been envious, the good ship Massilia, or Greta's ark, set sail from Plymouth bound for New York, carrying no less a personage, if you believe the green hype, than putative savior of the world, diminutive pigtail climate activist Greta Thunberg, age 16. I mean, it really is embarrassing. But you know what? It's not as embarrassing as the adulation afforded a pompous little twit, as one expert in the space termed her, who is also a member of Congress, End of the world spice. AOC had a pronouncement on the topic this week on Instagram.
Shallow Thoughts
Oh,
with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
where'd you get this? Is good.
You think overhauling our economy to decarbonize and save the planet is going to be expensive? Try not decarbonizing our economy and allowing sea levels to rise, every coastal city to go underwater, every Midwestern city or large swaths of the middle of the country experiencing drought on a level that we have not seen. That's going to be way more expensive. You think artificially having to create our food supply because the earth no longer can sustain growing foods naturally, or the sun is scorching the earth so much that we can't grow the foods that we used to be able to grow, that's going to be a lot more expensive. So we need to bite the bullet on the cost, because the alternative to not spending the money is A, death, and B, spending even more money.
All right,
Deep thoughts.
let that wash over you. We're pleased to be joined again by our friend Patrick Moore. He's the co-founder of Greenpeace and the gentleman who gave that moniker to AOC, which he so richly deserves. Patrick, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Dan.
What about the cost of decarbonizing the economy is much less than the cost of not doing so?
Well, first off, I mean, does she have a crystal ball about all these predictions, these fear-mongering of the not being able to grow any food, and that the cities are going to be underwater? There's no evidence to suggest that that's going to happen or that it is happening. And so it's just fake fear-mongering. And Greta's the same with her pronouncements of climate crisis. But it's become an epidemic. Parliaments and councils and cities around the world, well, mostly in the West, Russia, China, and India aren't having too much to do with this. But in the Western countries, people are declaring climate emergencies in cities that are the coldest in the world, like Edmonton, Alberta, in my country of Canada, just declared a climate emergency. It's moronic. That it is unbelievably ridiculous. And they say to listen to the scientists, and here we are listening to AOC and Greta Thunberg, who have absolutely no qualifications in the subject whatsoever and are just parroting what other people are telling her to say. Her opera star mother is obviously not a climate expert. Neither is Al Gore. And yet people are listening to them. So when they say listen to the science, they're being totally hypocritical, because they're actually asking us to listen to a bunch of morons.
Well, what did you think too? With the Amazon fires going on, celebrities were tweeting pictures of fires that weren't even in the Amazon. They were from 20 years ago from different countries.
Yes, and I tweeted on that. It's purely political. It's got to do with the president of Brazil, and all these so-called progressives don't like him because he's trying to do something useful for a change. And he understands the situation. He gave a very good statement on it. Most of these fires are clearing land that was already cleared before. That's what happens in the tropics. Stuff grows so fast down there that if you have a pasture with cattle or other grazing animals on it, it grows back into a forest all by itself. And you do have to re-clear. That's what it's called slash and burn agriculture. It's kind of a nasty term, but it basically means that you have to clear land over and over again. The same thing is true in equatorial Africa as it is in equatorial South America. And so it's purely political. Fires actually globally have been reduced by 25% since 2003. This came out from NASA just the other day. So, and there's nothing wrong with fire. One of the real problems with the so-called green movement is they are actually against combustion. They are against the oxidation of materials to produce heat. So as I coined some years ago, not only do we have to go back to living in caves, but we can't even have a fire to cook and keep warm anymore with these people.
Well, that's that's no problem, because they want to ban red meat. They're going to start by increasing the taxes on it. You've seen a university across the pond in London ban red meat on campus, ban
Take our
hamburgers on
dogs away
campus.
and
Yeah.
get rid of our dogs.
So that's going to be the next domino to fall, I suppose.
Well, and the thing, these people are fascists in the sense that it's fine for them to stop eating red meat. I don't care what they eat. If they want to be skinny, fine. But don't tell me what to eat. I mean, that is something to do with free choice, I think. And they are making it out because there's a climate emergency that they can be dictators about every single thing in our whole lives. And we have to listen to 16-year-olds pontificate about the most important political and scientific questions in the world today. Why don't we ask a bunch of 5-year-old girls what we should do? That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? I mean, maybe go down to where they can first speak.
Yes.
And at 2.5 or 3, and see what they have to say about climate change and fossil fuel use. I mean, it is crazy, and they act as though fossil fuels are some kind of poison from outer space. They were made by life. The coal was made from trees. The oil and gas was mostly made from plankton in the sea. They are made by photosynthesis. They're solar produced, and they are a huge store of solar energy in the Earth's crust that was trapped underneath the soil and turned into these marvelous fuels. And when we burn them, they produce carbon dioxide and water, which is what they were made from in the first place by photosynthesis. It's 100% perfect recycling. And so they just don't even understand the very basics of the earth, of chemistry, of science, geology, atmosphere, etc. They're just caught up in a complete fake fantasy fear world.
And if you think Greta Thunberg and AOC are intolerable, wait till you see the Democrat Socialists debate climate policy next week on CNN. They'll make those teenagers look well informed by contrast.
Yeah, somebody said they'd rather be thrown down a 40,000-foot hole than watch that. It's going to be 7 hours long, and it's going to be absolutely vacuous and absolutely lacking in educational content. So it's nuts, and I hope people are turned off by it because there's nothing there to learn, and it's just posturing, virtue signaling, pontificating. It's a bunch of I don't even know if I'd call it hot air.
It's fear mongering.
There's no energy in it.
Well, let's talk about scientists again. I mentioned Dr. Roy Spencer at the outset, and this is a topic you just touched upon, but because their emphasis is always about our carbon-based economy is destroying the planet. By the way, humans are carbon-based life forms too. They also don't like humans. They limit the kids and so on and so forth. They want to get rid of us too. Nir Shaviv is an Israeli astrophysicist. He's chairman of Jerusalem's Hebrew University's physics department. He gave an interview recently that suggests that rising CO2 levels play a very minor role in the Earth's climate compared to the influence of the sun and cosmic radiation. He said climate change has existed forever and is unlikely to go away, but CO2 emissions don't play the major role. Periodic solar activity does. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly agree that the sun is the primary cause of the Earth's climate. If there was no sun, there'd be no climate. This would be a dead rock and dark, too. So there's no doubt about that. And it is true that the sun has cycles. There's 3 of them called the Milankovitch cycles. People should look that up and see that actually the shape of the Earth's orbit changes, the tilt of the Earth changes, and there's a thing called precession that changes. It's partly due to the gravitational effect of Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus, the large gas planets, which have also got an effect on the sun's movement. So it's a very complex field of study, climate change. Also, there's the quiet periods of the sun and the extreme periods of the sun when it has many, many sunspots. Right now, it's in a quiet period, and some people believe that this will result in a cooling. And indeed, there has been some evidence of that in the southern hemisphere in particular. So these people who think they have a crystal ball and can predict the next 100 years of the Earth's climate, the crystal ball is a mythical object. There is no way in any computer model or any way at all to actually predict the future. most future predictions fail. And Al Gore is the classic example of that. He said that the Arctic would be ice-free in the summer by now. It's nowhere near ice-free in the summer, and the polar bear population has tripled or quadrupled in the last 30 or 40 years. And that may well be because there's less ice in the Arctic, and more plankton can grow, and more fish can eat the plankton, and more seals can eat the fish, and more polar bears can eat the seals. So these complex ecological food chains, all affected by solar radiation, are not something that a 16-year-old girl can be an expert in.
Maybe you should chaperone Greta Thunberg on her sail back to the UK from New York, and then you could get in on this conversation that the media doesn't want to let people like you in on.
She's not sailing back.
Oh, I
She's
know.
going
She's
back
flying.
on a plane.
Yeah, I know.
And a crew of people are flying from Europe to New York to get on the boat and take it back for her. She's just like one of these billionaires that just visits their yacht in some ideal location after a crew of people who are hired to take it there do so.
Yeah.
And not only that, her voyage is going to cost way more carbon dioxide than if she just got in a plane and flew to New York. Besides which, the boat is made of carbon fiber, and carbon fiber also ends up coming from CO2, because that's where most of the carbon in the universe comes from, especially in life.
Yes, but our betters don't have to play by the same rules or don't have to suffer the need to be intellectually consistent, Patrick. You know better than that. Patrick Moore.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it would appear so, and people should think about that. Think about who's telling you what the future is going to be and whether they really have any kind of knowledge that would be necessary to do so.
He is Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace. Follow him on Twitter at EcoSenseNow. Always great tweets on this topic. You know, facts and science and stuff. It's fun. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
My name is David Hochberg. If you'd like to pay off debt, call Team Hochberg now.